Բարև, שלום, עליכם, and welcome back, my fellow language learners, to Adventures in Language. In this video, we're covering 5 tips for how to make conversations in your target language less awkward. If you're like most language learners, you probably get a little bit nervous speaking in your target language with native speakers out in the real world, and you'd like some simple solutions for how to make those conversations go more smoothly. If that's the case, then stay tuned, because by the end of this video, you'll be equipped with the tools that you need to speak more confidently and more comfortably in your target language. All right, the 5 actionable tips that we're going to cover in today's video are: number 1, use filler words. You're learning the language, so it's inevitable that you're going to have these long thinking pauses while you're preparing yourself for your next sentence. It takes time to find the right word and to construct sentences on the fly. But let's get real, it can feel awkward or uncomfortable when the native speaker is staring back at you expectantly, waiting for you to finish your sentence. Believe me, I know the struggle. A fun way to make those thinking pauses feel more natural is to use filler words in the target language. So what are filler words? Filler words or filler phrases are expressions like, okay, well, sure, We use them all the time in our native languages, and they serve to help us sound more like a local, but also to fill the silence while our brains are constructing the upcoming sentence. For those very reasons, Mango courses intentionally teach you key filler words and phrases within the app. At some point, they become muscle memory, and you might even find them slipping into your native language, which is always very fun. Now, while filler words are an easy way to smooth out your conversation and your thinking pauses, remember that it's also okay to have some silence during a conversation. And those thinking pauses can be helpful for your learning, so go easy on yourself. Number 2, try something called circumlocution. Think back to a time when you were in the middle of a sentence and all of a sudden you got to a word that you realize you just can't remember, or perhaps never learned. What did you do? Best practice is to give yourself a few seconds to come up with it. And pro tip, you can use the filler word strategy during this time. And if after a couple seconds the word doesn't come to mind, then try circumlocution, which is a fancy way of saying describe the concept with other words that you do know, even if it means doing so in a long-winded manner. For example, if I didn't know the word for squirrel in English, I might say the rat with the big tail. Now, there are 2 hidden bonuses to using this method. 1, the other person is usually able to get the gist of your sentence, and they might even provide you with the word that you're looking for, which is a nice teachable moment. And 2nd, depending on the language, your circumlocution might end up actually being right. One of my friends was learning Mandarin Chinese, and she found herself in a conversation with a native speaker wanting to say the word for wallet, but she realized that she never learned it. So she used circumlocution, and she came up with money bag. She just put those 2 words together. Qin, bao. Turns out that's actually the word for wallet in Mandarin. Money bag. Makes sense, right? Of course, another strategy in these situations in which you really just can't come up with a word is to simply ask another speaker, how do you say XYZ? Successful language learning requires confronting your knowledge gaps, so don't be afraid to ask for help when you do need it. Number 3, guess your way forward. Now, I want you to imagine yourself having a conversation in the target language, and you don't know if the grammar in the sentence that you're about to say is right or completely wrong. What should you do? You should take a risk, go with your gut, and try it. Will you always get the order of your nouns and adjectives right? No. Will your verb tenses always be perfect? Probably not. But will the other person likely get the gist of what you're trying to say? Probably. While it may feel uncomfortable to guess your way forward when speaking, no one likes uncertainty. It's important to keep your end goals in mind. Research suggests that language learners with higher levels of risk-taking typically demonstrate better learning outcomes in the long term than those with low levels of risk-taking. Long story short, being overly concerned with your accuracy in the language will create more of those awkward language silences that you want to avoid. Plus, we make mistakes all the time in our native languages, so shouldn't really feel too bad when we do it in our non-native languages. Number 4, listen to understand, not to respond. When you listen just to prepare your response, then you're really not setting yourself up for success in being able to understand what is being said. This may sound like a small philosophical shift, but once you start doing it, it is amazing what you'll find you can understand. We've all been in a conversation where the other person is speaking and then we just get utterly and completely lost. And if you're like most language learners in that situation, you kick into survival mode. This means you give up on understanding exactly what they're saying. You might even nod to make it seem like you know what they're talking about. And you start desperately listening for a familiar word or two just so you can respond to them when it's your turn to talk. If you've experienced this before, then you may have more options than you realized in the moment. For starters, when someone is speaking quickly and beyond your current proficiency level, it's okay, and actually the most efficient, to intercede and tell them that you're not following. For this very reason, it's very important that you know how to say, "I didn't understand. Can you repeat more slowly?" Or something of the like in your target language. To that end, did you know that the Mango Languages app actually teaches you how to negotiate for meaning like that by teaching you key questions and handy conversational clarifiers? In this way, the app empowers you to continue building your language skills outside in the real world in real-life conversations. To explore more about the app, check out the link in the description. Okay, but back to point number 4. What happens if you've already asked the person to repeat themselves twice and you're still not understanding? What then? You can help move the conversation forward by driving the ship. For example, if all you caught were the words lunch and what sounded to you like maybe a day of the week, then you could guess their intended meaning and say something like, "What I understood from you is that you wanted to get lunch on Wednesday. Is that right?" The beauty of this tip is that even if you guessed incorrectly, at least now you have a point to start from in figuring out what it is they were trying to say. Before we get to our last point, if you're new here and you'd like to make sure you are up to date on all of our awesome language learning content, then come join the Mango fam by subscribing to the channel. Consider hitting that notification bell as well so you never miss another video from us. Okay, onward and upward to number 5. Identify your core linguistic insecurity. This one is all about looking inward. Reflect on what exactly about a conversation makes you feel anxious or uncomfortable. Do you notice yourself feeling anxious when speaking to anyone, or is it just with native speakers? Do you feel the need to be perfect in the target language? Do you feel like you need to sound native? Perhaps you're worried that you'll be judged for not understanding things. If so, here are a few pieces of wisdom. Remember that you're learning the language and you won't be perfect. Just remove that expectation from yourself. Truth is, most people will be happy to work with you and take on the communicative burden to have a conversation. At the same time, keep in mind that you ultimately have no control over their perceptions of you in the target language. So worrying about how they might be perceiving you is energy wasted. To reflect more on the underlying insecurities that might be holding you back on your language learning journey, check out the Setting Good Goals worksheet. It's a worksheet that'll get you to check in with your ambitions, perceptions, and progress in the target language. And it's free. Regardless of the source of your linguistic insecurities, naming them can be really relieving. It's like a whole weight gets lifted from your shoulders and you can start to really have fun in learning the language again. But remember, having this realization right now, here in this moment, doesn't mean that you won't need to check in and revisit every couple months. Language learning is like anything. It's got peaks and valleys, and our approach to it and our relationship with it is dependent on our mental state and where we are in life at that point. So if you notice yourself getting more uncomfortable in spoken interactions again, come back to this video or even just to this question in your mind and remind yourself that it will pass. And now I'm going to turn the video back to you. Do you have any other tips and tricks that we haven't mentioned yet that you use to make your conversations in the target language go more smoothly? If so, share them in the comments. Psst, wondering what languages were used in today's video? All that information and more can be found in the description down below. Well, my fellow language learners, that's all for this time on Adventures in Language. Tse-te-soots-YOON, guten Tag, and I look forward to hanging out with you here next time. Bye! It's me again. Thanks for watching. Don't forget to get your free Setting Good Goals worksheet, which you can access through the link right here on the screen. If you haven't yet watched our other videos, then I invite you to check out this playlist, which is full of fun language learning tips and tricks. See you in the next video.